I'm working on building this media wall, and so far I've destroyed my living room, royally pissed off my wife, built a drywall bump out, and got the cabinets built and installed. And my goal for this weekend is to get the shelving units built and the LED lights installed. But before I get ahead of myself, let's start breaking down some plywood. This is the first built-in project I've ever tackled, and I have to admit that I was intimidated by the idea for no reason at all. Making built-in cabinets and shelves are much easier than making a piece of furniture. No walls are perfectly flat or square, so basically you make whatever size box you need and then add trim and caulk to make it look all fancy. Keep that in mind as I make these shelves. These are going to be the most basic shelves you've ever seen. 2 sides, 1 top, and however many shelves I need. The shelves closest to the drywall bump out are the easiest because they're going to be identical in size. The outside shelves are going to be a little trickier because the voids are 2 different sizes. The void on the right side is shortened because of that HVAC duct. To keep this super simple, I'm cutting every piece to the same depth. I'll figure out how to attach the backing later. I'm using pocket hole screws and glue to assemble the tops and sides. The shelves are just going to be held in place by pocket hole screws. Rockler's right angle corner clamps help hold everything in place while I get all the screws drived in. Drived in, drove in, droved in, driven. Getting everything assembled has proven to be a little sketchy because the sides are so long. To help keep the units from self-destructing, I'm using one shelf to keep the sides spaced as I install the other shelves. This old dining table I call a workbench is obviously not perfectly flat, so I'm indexing the spacers from the top of the shelving unit. This should help keep the shelves uniformly installed. I hate the idea of having to go back and plug the pocket holes, but I've never had any luck drilling through the side into plywood shelves. The shelves always split open and the screw strips out. Pocket hole screws are strong enough to hold these shelves in place forever. I'm not using any glue here because it's just something else to clean up or sand. Fingers crossed that this thing fits. My plan is to leave a small gap with the ceiling and ultimately leave a forearm's width space in between the units. That way I can upgrade the LEDs as technology improves or run speaker wires. The spaces are going to be covered by fancy looking trim. Now that I got the units assembled, it's time to figure out how to add the back panel. I'm cutting 1/4 inch plywood, slightly oversized. In this case, the back serves 2 purposes. It adds some stability to the entire structure, and it covers the textured walls. I'm blessed with owning a home that was built in the 90s, so when the builder slap-ass built my house, he went cheap on the drywall work, covered every inch of my house with texture. Everything is getting covered in paint, so I'm not afraid to use pencils and leave marks everywhere. So I'm holding the back up to the shelving unit so I can trace out where to place the screws. To make life a little easier, I'm drilling out pilot holes and countersinking every one. I'm using really small screws to hold the back on, so I want as much thread as possible to bite into the structure. I'm adding glue to the shelves as it lies flat on my bench to prevent runs as best as I can. Then I'm standing the unit up and lining up the pencil marks to the shelves so I know the screws are going to be installed in the right place. Now I've got shelving units with oversized backs on it. How am I going to get the back to perfectly fit the shelves? old trusty dusty router and a flush cut bit. Only problem is, not all the screws are perfectly flush with the back, so I gotta work around that little problem. The shelving units are going to be mounted to the cabinet tops and studs in the back wall. To add a little meat to the units for the screws to bite into, I'm adding strips of 3/4 inch plywood to the top and the back of each shelf. I forgot to make pocket holes at the bottom of the shelves so I can attach the unit to the cabinet tops. So I gotta go back and make holes with the clamp and the single pocket hole guide. I have never used this thing before. It worked fine. No dust collection, but it made usable pocket holes. This is what it looks like after I got everything assembled, but not lined up or installed. I've got the cabinets and the top installed at a uniform parallel distance from the wall. Now the key here is to install the shelves at a uniform and parallel distance from the cabinet top. So I pushed all my shelves as tight to the wall as I could and figured out which one stuck out the furthest. That's the distance I used for the rest. The face of all the shelves have to be in line. So I used wood shims where needed to get them all to line up. I don't have a 4-foot straight edge, so I'm just using a level to make sure everything's in line. I'm taking my time, going back and forth with shims and my adjustable square, just to make sure everything is in line as best as I can get it. To complicate this problem a little more, I want all the gaps between the shelves to be a uniform distance. I want to be able to get my hand all the way to the back wall in case I decide to change or upgrade anything in the future. Now that I've got everything lined up as best as possible, I mount the units to the cabinet tops with pocket screws, then to studs in the back wall, and try to find joist in the ceiling. To install the LED light strips, I go back to the shop and rip a bunch of triangle strips at the table saw. If the light is installed on the bottom of the shelf, it's going to point directly down and won't illuminate the back wall. So I'm making a bunch of right angle triangle strips to tack in place for the LEDs to stick to. This should illuminate the entire shelf cavity. I'm cutting 4-inch strips of 3/4 inch plywood oversized for the shelf width. Go over to my table saw and set it to 45 degrees and start ripping enough strips to have one piece to go under every top and shelf. This isn't aerospace science, so I'm just using a speed square to get close to 45 degrees. Then I went back to the miter saw, cleaned up one end of each strip, and then cut all the strips to final length. I grabbed my air compressor, nail gun, and some ear pro for my wife, who refused to stop looking at the TV while I tacked all the LED support strips in place. These are super cheap LED strips. I got them at the local big box store. I think it was $10 for 18 feet. I did the math, figured out that should be slightly more than enough. I just got to figure out the right way to serpentine it through all the shelves. Starting my way from the power source, I just wiggled my lights through their little maze and luckily wound up with a little left over. I'm not sure what trim I'm going to use as end caps to cover the voids between the shelves, so for now, I just ripped some leftover 1/4 inch plywood as temporary covers. Now you just sat there and watched me do it. Get up and do it yourself.